Welcome to the A-Side, B-Side podcast with Brooke Summers and Adam Weingarten. How you doing, Adam?
I am good. I'm hiding in my basement, playing on a computer, so it is a very familiar moment of my life.
Well, let's go back and introduce ourselves and talk about how we know each other. So, Adam and we used to work together at a radio station. And how long ago
shall go
was
nameless.
that? Yes.
That was 13 years ago.
So, and we worked together. You did sales for a while and some other shenanigans. And then we did a show together for almost a year.
Almost a year. Yeah. I got scared and ran away. Relationships are hard for me. So at some point I usually just cut and run. So it was getting too good and I had to get out of town.
You're like, this feels too good. I got to go.
I was like, I have to ruin this in some way.
So we've literally been friends for 15 years.
Yeah.
And we have not physically seen each other. We've seen pictures, we talk, we text constantly, but we've not seen each other in how long?
13 years.
God.
I mean, 13 years this fall.
And
so, November.
We literally know everything about each other.
No,
even
absolutely.
though we haven't seen each other in 13 years.
I mean, it's kind of amazing that the medium of text, which can so often cause miscommunication and people not understanding what the other one is trying to say, for us in some way, it has been the way to cement our friendship and talk about everything under the sun. And sometimes we misinterpret each other, but not nearly as much as my other text conversations.
But I think we're also really good to clear it up. Like, wait, what did you mean by that? Like, we don't let it fester and harbor any ill feelings. It's like, wait, what does that mean?
Yeah. And often it's because you and I come from two very different backgrounds, two very different experiences. And then we also tend to be a little opinionated. So we have to find a way to kind of work through that and learn from the other one. And I know, just to take it to a personal level, one thing that is always been a resource for me is your knowledge as a parent. We both have two kids, mm-hmm. and I have leaned on the fact that you've been a parent a little bit longer than I have. And that is like a resource, someone that I know I can always come to with no matter the question, but especially when it comes to, being a parent and trying to exist within that world and navigate. Like, we didn't really realize when we were kids that when we were playing The Floor is Lava and you're jumping from couch to chair that's basically parenthood, because the floor is always lava, mm-hmm. and you just got to figure out a way to get from one side to the other and keep everyone alive.
I could not have said that better myself. So we both have been wanting to do a podcast for a while now, and it was an opportunity for us to get back together and work together again. And we both were like, hell yeah.
And I have all this extra time on my hands because, COVID. So it was like, perfect. I will spend money on a microphone and just play on a microphone again. And I feel like, pump up the volume with Christian Slater back in the mid 80s, with a pirate radio station coming out of my basement.
All right. So A-Side, B-Side, not only does it stand for, Adam and Brooke, but it's because we have two very different ideas that we've kind of mashed up together. We've got my side because I am a true crime. I have a few passions like music and books and movies, but true crime, I mean, that is just, I can spend all day, night, days and days and days watching stories and reading about crimes. And I don't know if it's a woman thing, because almost every woman I know, it's like, we love crime. I mean, look, there's channels dedicated to it. Snapped on Oxygen, that's like a bunch of shows, and then you got ID Channel, which is just show after show after show of crazy crimes, and I love it.
And from an outsider's perspective, as someone who loves like murder mysteries by Agatha Christie and still watches like every episode of Midsummer Murders, I think part of it, those are very surface level, but so much of true crime is about putting the puzzle together and looking at all of like the little details. And in my experience, women are a lot more interested in details and the like how the whole picture fits together and discovering something and investigating and like truly understanding something from a holistic level. Whereas I, as a guy, just want to know who did it.
Yeah, you're like, who did it when? Okay, is it tough? All right, good.
Yeah, and was it the butler? Probably.
Well, your side of things is
media and movies and nostalgia. I proudly own one of the largest VHS collections. That is only because no one else will admit to having a VHS collection. But I have a ton of VHS movies. And for me, how I understood media from early childhood until, through college, I mean, when Blockbuster Video was going out of business, I was in there buying every 50-cent DVD and VHS I could find. Because for me, watching movies at home or on a trip or like at a sleepover was always such a huge part of it. So mine is going to be looking back at some hidden gems or things that have gotten forgotten, I think, by the bigger media monster that or maybe even are hard to even get a hold of again, like the one we'll talk about today. But that's going to be my focus: movies, media, nostalgia, and how we experience it.
All right. So let me ask you real quick before we get into things. How many VHS tapes do you think you have? Do you know an exact number?
I do not know an exact number. I'm actually in the process of categorizing them, but I have at this point, and I have not gone through all of my boxes, at least 600.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Yeah,
I can't wait for an update on a later podcast.
Yeah, there are people that collect like baseball cards and comics, and I've got some of those too. But for some reason, it was like there was this period over the last 10 years when everyone else was clearing out their basement. I would find out. I'd be like, "Do you have any VHS movies?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, we were just going to throw them away." And I'm like, "No, I'll take the entire box." And they're like, "This guy is weird, but please, thank you, take this." Like, it's gotten to the point where like Goodwill will not take VHS tapes.
Wow.
Like,
really?
They take everything, but if they see there's a box of VHS tapes, they're going to be like, just go recycle this. Like, they can't sell them. Nobody wants them. And there's some really amazing stuff out there that is only available in like the VHS version. The catch-22 is that VHS players are notoriously crappy and they break all the time and they break tapes. So it's like this sort of like Sophie's choice of like, oh my goodness, do I watch this movie on this thing that might kill it? But I really want to watch this movie.
All right, we're going to get into that. That's all coming up. First, we're going to jump into the B-side. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. And now it's time for the B-side. So I originally, my goal with this is to each week bring a different crime that I've never heard of and hopefully that you've never heard of. And as a crime lover, a true crime lover, it's going to be probably a little difficult, but that's the fun in it because there are so many stories that people don't know about and there's stories that shed on them. So initially,
there's always a Florida man story every week. So
every week, every day,
a week, yeah.
Well, initially, I was going to start with something a little close to home. It's a story that I am kind of familiar with because it happened right about a little bit after I moved here to Bowling Green. And I learned some of the details, but I didn't know all the details. And it was the story of Katie Autry. But we're going to save that one for another week because I just found out about this case yesterday and it is mind blowing.
Uh-oh.
It's the House of Horror. It's the story of Xavier Dupont de Ligonnes and his family.
I mean, his name's already a House of Horror.
Oh my goodness. Wait until you... Okay, so you meet Xavier, who is this loving and kind and patient man he's a devoted family man. He and his wife Agnes, they met when he was 20 and she was like 16, and it was like love sight. And but Xavier, like most young men, okay, first of all, he comes from a French aristocratic family, and he wanted, like most young men, to travel the world. So he and Agnes unfortunately parted ways for about a year while he traveled.
Okay.
Well, when he went back home, they are in France, and I will butcher all of the French names, so I apologize, but they're from...
What time period is this? Is this recent, or are we talking like everybody's wearing a corset?
No. This is recent. Okay. He was born in Versailles in 1961.
Okay. So, yeah, recent, but not like Tuesday.
Right, exactly. So after his year of travel, he goes back to, I believe they were in Versailles, and he finds that Agnes is pregnant with someone else's child.
Well, dude, you were away for a year.
Right. But he says, you know what? That's cool. That's okay. I love you. She was single. She was, soon to be a single mom. They got back together. He married her and adopted their son, their firstborn, Arthur. So he never, ever, ever acted as if Arthur was not his.
Yeah, he was like, in for a pound, in for a penny, in for a pound. This is my kid. I love you.
Exactly. And he was a very good, very loving father. So after Arthur, they have three more. They have Thomas, Anne, and Benoit. Benoit is the youngest. And I mean, talk about a gorgeous family. They were a good looking crew. Very, very sweet, of course, very well to do because he was a count.
Yeah.
They were used to kind of living the good life. The kids went to private Catholic school. They're devout Catholics. I mean, from the outside in, they look like the perfect family.
Yeah, the family that everybody is kind of jealous of, but still respects.
Exactly. And I mean, even their neighbors talked about how fun-loving and wonderful they were. You know, one of the kids played drums and like the whole family was supportive. I believe Arthur had a job at a pizza shop, so very normal family, but also very well to do. So here's what happens. We're going to jump into this timeline a bit. So on Monday, April 11th of what year was this again?
It's got to be the 70s by that point. I mean, they've got four kids.
No, this was like 2000 or wait a minute. Okay, so the youngest was born in 1997. He was 13 at the time of his death. So this is like 2010.
Yeah, this is like just after we stopped doing a radio show, basically. Just to put it into context for me, because my timeline's always about me.
2011, I believe it is. 2011, we're going to say. Okay, so in 2011, the youngest by now is 13 years old. Something weird happens. Their neighbor, it's a Monday, and their neighbor kind of walks past their house, and she notices the shutters are closed, and she says, hey, that's odd. They never close their shutters. Even when they're, on vacation, the shutters are always open. The next day, she notices they're closed again. The next day, she notices they're closed again. So she contacts the police on Wednesday, April 13th.
Because of shutters.
Because of shutters. Yeah, they've been
Wow.
closed for more than a week, and Agnes's car has been parked outside on the street this entire time. So it's got her a little bit concerned.
Yeah.
What we don't know at this point is that on that Monday, April 11th, Anne and Benoit's school received a letter signed by Xavier stating that Anne and Benoit were going to be leaving the school and the family was going to be moving to Australia due to urgent professional changes.
Wow. That's a big change.
Yeah. Also, okay, on the 13th, the neighbor in Nantes, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Nantes. She becomes
sounds good to me.
She becomes very concerned, so she calls the police. The police come, they do a wellness check, nothing.
Nobody's there?
Nope, nobody's there. They get a locksmith, they open the doors. It looks as if the family has just kind of packed up and left. There's nothing really out of place. I mean, like furniture and things are there. The family also had 2 dogs. The dogs are not there. But nothing looks out of place. So the next day, the police are called again. Like the neighbor is like, look, something is not really sitting well with me. Can you come and check again? The police come back again. The police,
that's awfully nice of them.
Let me tell you, the police not come back. They don't only come back a second time. They come back a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time. It wasn't until the 6th revisit that they found something was a little off.
That's crazy. 6 visits. I mean, not a lot. This is probably because it's, relatively well-known family, but that seems excessive.
It does seem excessive, but the neighbors just kept saying, look, 5 or 6 people plus 2 dogs. They had like a little car and that little car was missing. They're like, look, the 6 people plus 6 people, bags and dogs, they're not all fitting in this car. Something's not adding up. These shutters are closed. Then the family starts getting concerned because they can't get in contact with anyone. So they just keep pressuring the police. Can you please check? Can you please check? So finally, on the 6th visit is when they make a discovery. The police are in the backyard in the garden, and they look under the back patio and they do a little bit of digging, and they find a plastic bag.
Okay.
They dig some more, get the bag out, and they open it up, and it reveals a body.
Okay. I was afraid this was going to be like a hand or a finger or something.
No, it's an entire body. They dig more, and they find 5 total in the yard. They find the 5 bodies, the mother and the 4 children, and the 2 dogs.
Man, he went after the dogs.
Even the dogs. But when he did it, not only did he bury them, he buried them with like religious pieces. It was almost like he gave them a sacred burial.
Huh.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, of course, the police keep digging in the yard. They found the 5 bodies. They're looking for a 6th body. No 6th body pops up.
Right. Nothing.
Well, this is on April 21st. They find the bodies. The autopsies are performed on the 22nd, and they find that all of the victims were drugged. He put them to sleep, and then he shot them with a .22 long rifle as they slept.
All right. Well, then how did the neighbors notice the shutters, but this guy was like doing grave digging and target practice and nobody noticed?
I don't understand how no one heard gunshots. I'm sure when the gunshot happened, the dogs had to have gone crazy unless he drugged them too. I mean, I don't know because I don't think they did autopsies on the dogs, but I mean, it would seem that
of a dog autopsy.
Yeah, I'm not either, but it would seem that something would have alerted them to hey, what was that?
If this lady was so concerned about closed shutters, Like that sounds like she's like the lady from the old television show that's constantly looking out her window and like knows everybody's movements.
The nosy neighbor that's like,
The nosy neighbor,
hey,
yeah.
that car wasn't there 5 minutes ago. Who's at your house?
Yeah. Like if this is one of my movie shows, she's the bad guy already.
You would think so, yeah.
Right. Yeah, but not.
Actually, if it were for her being the nosy neighbor, they
right.
probably never would have figured this out. Because you see, Xavier, I'm not going to read the entire thing because it's rather long and lengthy, but Xavier wrote a letter. And if everyone had just kind of received this letter, and that's also kind of what tipped off the family, because they received this letter, and at first they were like, maybe. And then, you get something and you read it and you start thinking about it and you're like, oh, something is not sitting right with me.
Yeah. Like you set it aside, you come back, you read it again, and like there's just something that doesn't click.
Yeah, exactly. So this letter was actually typed up and sent out on the 11th, I believe it is. Yeah, this is actually sent out on the 11th.
Is that the same day he sent the stuff to the kids' school?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So this was the day.
This must have been the day. Yeah. So the letters, it's not directed at anybody specifically. It starts off, "Hi everyone, huge surprise. We have to leave urgently for the US." Now remember, in the letter to the kids' school, it said Australia.
Yeah. Got to get his story straight.
So it says, we have to leave urgently for the US due to a very particular set of circumstances we will explain below. You're receiving this letter by conventional post because for the next few years, we can't communicate any other way. No emails, no texts, no phone calls for safety reasons. When you read this letter, we'll no longer be in France and won't be able to return for an as yet undetermined period of time, a few years. You must be wondering what's going on. Here's a story, at least as much as we're allowed to tell you. This letter is the only correspondence we're allowed to write, which might be good news for some of you, as it's been checked, and it has been checked before being sent to you. And it goes into like when he started a company, they were put in contact with someone that was with the DEA, and they were looking for a French national to infiltrate a French nightclub to obtain information. And so apparently he was able to do this, and he says he testified, and he says, so once I was tested and briefed, I accepted my mission of working incognito for the DEA under the condition that I maintain secrecy, which includes, even more importantly, the children. And he says that's why they returned to France initially instead of going to Miami. He said, this opportunity allowed him to build up some businesses. And he says, with the information that I, Xavier, have collected at this time, I have become a key witness in the upcoming trial involving major international drug trafficking kingpins. The trial will have to take place in the U.S. for the next few years. The date has not yet been determined.
So he basically said, I've been a spy this whole time, but luckily they let me write a letter to you to tell you about it.
Exactly. So, again, the family gets this letter initially, and they're like, I don't know, something's not really sitting right with me. And actually, a few days earlier, Arthur, who is the oldest, his girlfriend, she was a little bit concerned because she hadn't heard from him. She knocked on the door of the family home. There was a light on in the first floor, but the two dogs didn't bark. They're two Labradors. We know if somebody knocks on a door, we both have dogs. We both know somebody knocks on the door, those dogs are going crazy.
Yeah. Mine just wants to meet you and be your best friend. Like anyone could break into my house as long as they gave her like back scratches.
Right. If you've got Cheerios, mine are your best friend. Okay. So we found the bodies, but we have not found Xavier. So, it looks like, again, we did the autopsies, and all of them were drugged, and they were shot with a .22 long rifle. Xavier actually had this exact type of weapon. He inherited it from his father 3 weeks before the murders.
Oh, so it could have been like a mentally triggering type of event.
Well, here's what the theory is. The theory is that Xavier financially had gotten into a bit of trouble. The lease on the house had been terminated. All the bank accounts had been closed.
Wow.
The children's school received a final payment settlement. Agnes's employer was informed that she was suffering from gastroenteritis and that they were moving to Australia.
Right.
A message was placed on their mailbox. Please return all correspondence to sender. And the house had been emptied. There were no pictures on the wall. If I'm remembering correctly, I think there might have been some furniture, but there were no pictures. So it looked like somebody had planned to leave.
Like everybody just taking all their stuff. Mm-hmm. Anything that was emotional or anything that was private, they took with them.
Exactly. Now,
I mean, I'm really attached to my couch, but not everybody is.
I like my mattress. Maybe I would take that, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you're moving to the U.S., do they have beds here? Who knows?
I mean, come on. Who wants to pay all that money to buy one here when you could just ship it for thousands of dollars?
Got to be cheaper to just ship it over a giant ocean.
Here's where it also gets really interesting. Back in March, rifle bullets for that exact type of rifle were purchased. Xavier also registered at the Charles I'm going to totally butcher this, but the Charles de Homeneres shooting range in an area north of Nantes, where he visited 4 times between March 26th and April 1st, and he obtained his firearms license.
So this dude practiced to shoot people that were asleep.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of confidence.
There's also a sales receipt from a do-it-yourself store that was found in the family home. It was from a store located in Andre, which is about 200 miles from Nantes. It's a 3.5-hour drive. The receipt was dated late March, and it listed several purchases, including a large roll of bin liners and a box of adhesive plastic paving slabs.
Oof. Okay.
On April 2nd, Xavier buys 4 bags of lime from different shops in the Nantes area. I guess he figured if he bought them all from one shop, it would look a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, like, why do you need all this lime, dude? I don't even know what lime does.
Exactly. On April 3rd, a neighbor remembers seeing Agnes for the last time. Shortly afterwards, he saw Xavier putting large bags into his car, a Citroen C5. That's the car that was missing. That's a very small car that the neighbor was like, there's no way they could all fit in this car.
Right. Yeah. Like 6 people, 2 dogs in like a tiny 2-door.
Mm-hmm. Leading to
like a Fiat or something, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly about the size of it. Some more things that kind of lead to there must have been some financial problems. A bailiff came to the house on April 5th to recover a debt of 20,000 pounds, but no one answered the door.
I wouldn't answer the door if I owed somebody 20,000 pounds.
Xavier on April 8th went onto a Catholic online forum for the last time from the IP address of the family home. He also sent an email to his brother-in-law saying, everything is fine. You'll hear more detailed news soon through Christine. That's his sister. And then, of course, on April 11th is when it was noticed that the family had not been seen for several days. On April 15th, let me go back. On April 14th, Xavier, now remember, the family hadn't been found yet. So on April 14th, Xavier withdrew some money from an ATM. And that evening, he slept at a hotel in a town. He was captured on surveillance cameras. That's the last known sighting of him, April 14th of 2011.
Oh, wow.
April 15th, he checks out of the hotel and he leaves his car.
So he's just ghost.
So April 21st, the family is found. April 28th is the funeral. And Xavier Dupont de Ligonnes has not been seen since.
And so is a theory that they were out of money? And
the theory is they were out of money, and instead of admitting to his family that he was having financial issues, he killed them.
And ran away.
I mean, look, just run. Don't kill me.
Yeah, like that. That's weird.
Yeah, so that the theory is he killed him, he ran, and he started a new life. Now, up until recently, he had not been spotted. The thing that was noted about Xavier is that, he's not a bad looking fellow, but he's kind of an average looking fellow. He's someone that he has no distinctive features, so he blends in. So he also spoke English very well. So he could go to an English-speaking country. He could, and it's very easy from where he was in France to just hop on a bus or a train or a boat and just be gone.
Wow.
They said you could even walk through the woods and be in Italy, in a matter of time. So he vanished. Well, that was until recently, as of this podcast, within the last few days of this podcast, there has been a possible credible sighting. Someone actually saw an episode of Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix.
Right, which is just relaunched.
Exactly. And they saw this story, and they were in Chicago and heard someone speaking French, and they looked over and it looked like Xavier. They actually caught a picture of him, and they have sent it to authorities, and authorities are investigating.
Weird. Wow. I hope, this is where my brain goes, gosh, I really hope I don't look like this guy.
No, you don't. You look nothing like this guy.
Because everybody who kind of looks like him is now going to have their picture taken left and right.
And are you fluent in French?
No, I am not currently. Just the swear words.
Okay, well then you're good to go.
I mean, that seems like a major slip up, though. Why would he start speaking? I guess there are I shouldn't say that. My kids went to a French immersion school, so there are plenty of people that speak French here in Minnesota, let alone Chicago or a more cosmopolitan type area. But it just seems like the last thing you'd want to do is potentially give away that little bit of info.
Well, I mean, and think about how much time has passed. I think he's on a whole nother continent.
Right.
So he's probably thinking, I'm safe. Nobody knows who I am.
Right.
Whatever. I can speak French, and it's not a big deal. Like you said, it's a big city. There's lots of languages being spoken in Chicago.
Right. I mean, I've been doing this for 9 years. This is old hat to me. I'm really smart. No one's gonna is he just what can you do for a job then if you're a spree murderer on the run? It's you're working at Costco or so many functional questions.
I feel like I don't know. Here's my theory. He's got a new name. Obviously, he's got a new identity. He's probably a professor or something somewhere. Maybe he's teaching French at the University of Chicago.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you really don't know. People could have all sorts of backgrounds. And it wasn't, did they, in the story, the research you've done, was there ever any indication that this guy was a little bit off?
No. And that's what's got everybody so thrown off. I mean, this was a hands-on, loving dad. You see pictures of him and he's playing with the kids. He's, he's very affectionate. He's very loving. I mean, he was dad number one.
Yeah. Ward Cleaver.
Exactly. The French version.
Yeah. Ward Cleaver.
Ward Cleaver. Yeah. But he went from adoring family man to cold-blooded executioner.
Premeditated. You mentioned all the places he went. This wasn't oh, I've had a really bad day. Everything is horrible. My life is going to end. I should probably kill everybody. This was I got to go to 4 different stores to buy lye because I've been planning this for 2 months.
And how do you look your family in the face when you're planning this literally for months before you do this? How are you able to look them in the face and carry on as if everything is normal?
I mean, in a weird way, that part doesn't surprise me as much as the execution. He actually got it done. Every day we, in any situation, whether it's work or family or relationships, we all tell little lies, or we hide things, or we, disguise things. So that trait is something that we've, learned and practiced for most of our lives. So it's just, this is a slightly bigger thing, but once you've lied about one thing, it's just easier to lie about the next. So that, I mean, I guess that to me doesn't sound as crazy as it is that he actually pulled off like just the cleanup.
Yeah.
You got 6 people and 2 dogs, and you're burying them all in a neighborhood where your neighbors notice when your shutters are closed for 3 days.
Well, see, the remarkable thing about the very first visit, when the police went into the house, they noticed, like I said, they didn't even notice the pictures or anything were gone on that very first visit because everything looked so normal. The only thing they really noticed was that like some of the beds were made up and some were not. And they felt like, well, okay, if you were leaving, maybe they liked these sheets a lot more than these other sheets, so they took those.
Right. Where it was probably how did he get rid of all this stuff? Like, where'd all their stuff go?
That's the thing. No, but I mean, nobody's found anything of theirs since.
Crazy. Like, it all has to be like, I don't know, maybe he just tossed it but like just to take all the pictures off of a wall of a family of 6. I mean, I've only got 2 kids and myself and a dog, and that's going to take several boxes full of just stuff off our walls.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't just like disappear.
I mean, this man must have made trip upon trip upon trip to whatever landfill or whatever, and nobody noticed. Did he do it in the dead of the night? Did he do it during the day when everybody was at work? I mean, how did he pull this off? Was
he taking like one picture a day? Because you wouldn't notice one picture right away,
True.
Like you take a picture down, or like you'd notice when they were all gone at once. But if he was taking like one box of stuff for like 3 months every day, I mean, that's a lot of dedication.
It's so weird. I need to tell you this too. On April, because I think this is about the day where it happened. Like they didn't notice for a few days, but I think it happened around the 5th. Because on the 5th, Thomas he's the second oldest. He was actually at a friend's house playing music. His friend confirmed, yes, I saw him on the 5th. He was at my house and he was supposed to stay. But Xavier phoned him and said, I need you to return home to Nantes because your mom's been involved in a cycling accident. So he took the train home around 10 o'clock. The next day, his friend tried to get in touch with him, but he only received a brief text message back saying, I'm not coming to yours. I'm ill, really ill. I'm not coming to class. And then 2 days later, Tomas's friend received a text that said, I'm out of battery. My dad's looking for a new charger for me. That was the last that he'd ever heard from him. So I think that my personal opinion is that it happened on that day. Also, Arthur, I mentioned earlier, he worked at a pizza store, and his boss noted that he never came in to pick up his wages, and he said he always was on time to pick up his wages.
Oh yeah, if you've ever worked in any place that gives the paycheck out, the one time that every employee is on time is when they're going to pick up their check.
Exactly. So Xavier Dupont de Ligonnes is in the wind, but maybe he was spotted in Chicago, and maybe we will get to update this case very soon. That's
crazy.
Did I blow you away?
Yeah, no, that's crazy that I'm so stuck on the silliness of like the where do you put all the stuff? But
exactly, especially in a car that's the size of a Prius,
right? Like that's like clothes, and to make it look like you just like packed up and left. Like you got to take a lot of stuff. Yeah, but
I'm telling you that I heard that story and I was like, that is crazy.
Well, hopefully he doesn't catch wind that everybody is looking for him and he'll screw up again.
I hope so. I hope he forgets and maybe says something about his family back in France, or I don't know, but I just hope he's caught very soon.
Yeah, because then we can find out where he put all the stuff.
That's what you're still stuck on, is where is the stuff?
Where's the stuff? And also, very bad. He killed people. We should probably put him away for life.
But where's the stuff?
Where's the stuff? Like this man may have a magic like cave somewhere. I don't know.
All right. So because that was so crazy and just wild and, sad on so many levels, here's something wild. that'll make you laugh.
Okay.
If you are in Delaware, it is illegal to sell dog hair.
Well, okay.
Yeah. State residents of Delaware are barred from selling the hair of a dog or a cat. Like, who just looked at their dog and said, man, I can make a pretty penny off of you, bozo? Well, I don't know.
You know what it was? And this is my theory, is that there was a guy who sold wigs.
Oh.
And everyone's like, oh, these wigs are great. And then you find out they were made of cat or dog, and somebody got ticked off. It was probably a judge that bought a crappy wig and then got ticked off and sued the guy, and they changed the law.
What are those dogs that have that like long flowing, like golden hair?
Like golden retrievers?
No, but I mean, that might work too. But there's these dogs with like this long, I'm going to see if I can find it.
Yeah, my dog knowledge is pretty much what I saw in the movie Best in Show.
Oh, like, okay, so like an Afghan hound, they have like really long, beautiful hair. Maybe it was
almost looks like they were in Flock of Seagulls.
Yes, maybe that's what it was made of. And the judge bought that for his wife, and his wife found out it was dog hair, and
just flipped.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, not the guy's fault who's making the wigs. He's just using what he's got.
Oh my gosh, but there you go. So that is the B-side.
Welcome back to the A-Side, B-Side podcast. Now it's time for the A-Side. So I love media. I've always loved media, and it's been something that has been ingrained in me since I was a little kid. And this has been a really weird week for my memories. Mm-hmm. My parents have recently sold the house that I grew up in, which is big, and we've been packing up everything.
Very huge.
Huge. I mean, great job. I mean, the house was perfect for us. It was tons of memories, all good stuff. But while going through all these boxes, I've always also been planning on moving myself at the end of the summer. So I've been going through boxes and downsizing as well. And so I was going through, as we mentioned, I've got a lot of VHS tapes. And one thing I love about VHS tapes is that's how I first discovered movies and TV and stories. We would always have VHS, tapes that we watched at home. We had a conversion van because it was the 80s and 90s, and those were the thing that you could have that had a VHS player in it. And we would go on road trips from Minnesota all the way to Arkansas or Colorado, or go out to the, to Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills, or even drive all the way, to Chicago, where we would, if we had known, we'd have been looking for this French guy. But yeah. I was going through all these boxes, and I've got tons and tons of movies that I really, really loved. A lot of them are, the ones that were released on video. Except there is a box of videos that from the early 80s to the mid 80s that my father recorded directly off of TV. So this is like ancient times DVR. We would see something was coming up that we wanted to watch, and my dad would hit record on the VCR, and we would then be able to rewatch those movies. Mm-hmm. And so I found a tape this last week that was one of my favorite tapes because it had two movies that were part of my understanding of the world of Star Wars. So everybody knows Star Wars. It's, Luke and Leia, and there was the movies in the late 70s, and then 1981 was when Return of the Jedi came out, and then we had the prequels that came out in the 90s, that we just recently had this other big trilogy, and those are the big ones. Everybody knows those. But as a kid, I watched two movies that were direct to TV, but based in the world of Star Wars, probably as much as I watched any of the others. And they, for some inexplicable reason, have not been released on Disney Plus. So Disney Plus has all the other Star Wars stuff as all together, except there's a few things that it has not released, and they won't say why. Huh. And two of them are these movies I grew up with. One of them came out in 1984. It is Caravan of Courage, and it's an Ewok movie that was broadcast on ABC on, I believe, like a Sunday night. And there was a sequel to that came out the next year in 1985, Ewoks: The Battle of Endor. And I absolutely love these movies. But the thing is, they're not really Star Wars movies. You think of Star Wars movies, it's like spaceships and space battles and lightsabers. These two movies are set in that universe, but are so much more fairy tales, and like they almost have an aspect of fantasy to them as opposed to sci-fi. So in 1984,
okay, wait, give me an example, because when you say Star Wars to me, I know Luke, I know Leia, I know Darth Vader and Han and Chewie and Lando.
Absolutely.
But that's about all I know. Like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you Star Wars canon. I couldn't tell you what the whole everything is behind it. So when you say it's more fantasy than sci-fi than Star Wars is, what does that mean? So
the difference that I point to the most is these are basically movies based around these tiny little teddy bears. Remember the Ewoks from Return of the Jedi?
Yes.
They look like, teddy bears. They're like murder bears. They're little tiny teddy bears that somehow overthrow the Empire.
Okay.
And these movies were set in that world on this forest moon. And they very much feel more like, Lord of the Rings than they do Star Wars. The first one, you've got this family that's in a spaceship and they crash land on the moon. And then they get separated because a monster comes and steals mom and dad away. Okay. So you've got the two main characters, Mace and Sindel, who are a teenage boy and his little sister who appears to be like 8 to 10.
Okay.
And they're trying to find their parents who they've been separated from. They stumble upon the Ewoks. They have first, the big brother wants to fight the Ewoks because he thinks they're going to hurt them. They, become friends with the Ewoks, go to their village. And then straight out of Lord of the Rings, the mayor, I guess you would call him. He's the chief of the Ewoks, sets together a caravan of courage and gets all these people together to go and find where the parents are. So you've got all these different Ewoks, and they come from different backgrounds, and they all come together just like they do in Lord of the Rings, and they go off on this adventure. And so at that point, you're not dealing with like spaceships and laser. Like there's one laser gun in the entire thing. It's swords and axes and guys going, across perilous journeys. There's a big spider at one point they've got to fight, but it's this whole journey of this group of friends coming together. And it has very much more a fantasy, like Willow or Lord of the Rings than it does Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And so the whole group goes together. They go through perils and journeys. There's, one Ewok who is like this big burly guy with an axe, and he and the teenage boy like become friends eventually. And then they go and they rescue the parents. But the entire thing is this really simple story of people coming together, going on an adventure, and working through their differences, even though they really don't understand each other. And you've got the teenage boy who clearly is kind of the one who's the most thick-headed about everything, not wanting help, not wanting to trust other people, not wanting to become friends with these, walking, talking teddy bears until the end when they actually figure out a way to defeat basically it's a troll, it's a monster that has kept their parents captive and is about to eat them.
Okay.
So it's this entire story that just speaks more of connection. And it's something that some of the Star Wars films just struggle with, where you've got all these different people coming together and it's a really cohesive narrative. And it was really well received. I mean, it won a Grammy for special effects. And the special effects, this was another thing that I love about it, is that you've got one of the last movies that Lucasfilm used stop motion as for their effects. After this, they went into something called Go Motion. Eventually, they got to that whole now everything's digital for the effects. Mm-hmm. But for the big troll creature, he is literally claymation, and every time you see him moving, that's thousands of frames where they would have to move the clay every little bit, take a frame, move it, take a frame, move it, take a frame. And there's some magic in the way that it's done that's, also adds a lot of humanity to it. So Caravan of Courage is a really good movie in terms of feeling like sort of like your cut rate Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring type of thing. Ewoks: The Battle of Endor messed me up emotionally.
Why?
So this is the sequel that comes out the next year.
Okay.
And we recorded it as well. It picks up about 6 months after where the story ended. So the family's been reunited. They're working to fix their spaceship. They're friends with the Ewoks. Everything seems great. You come back to the second movie, right away, the family's at the ship. They're all getting attacked by this band of marauders, and everybody gets killed except the youngest daughter.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah, and we're talking like 1985 TV movie. So, like, they don't get, like, stabbed where you see them get stabbed. It's like this guy runs into a building and then that building blows up.
Oh.
Yeah, so this one has very much more a, like, wizard and sorcerer feel to it because the bad guy, I think his name is Turok, or Tuvik, something like that. I'm not going to pronounce it right. It's French, basically. He is this warlord who wants to get the power that makes the ship fly. And he's got this sorceress who can turn into a crow as his like sidekick. So it's way more fantasy than it is Star Wars. Because at no other point in the history of Star Wars do we talk about people being able to turn into crows and use magic. So it kind of makes sense that this has not been part of the Lucasfilm or the Disney canon,
right?
Because it's all just so way out there. Like it fits more with Willow than it does with Star Wars. Willow being another Lucasfilm.
I remember Willow.
Willow was the stuff. Like that movie is highly underrated, and it's got a very young Val Kilmer. And again, Warwick Davis, who plays Willow, is one of the only actors who's been in almost every Star Wars film. He was in both the Ewok movies playing Wicket, the little Ewok that everybody recognizes. So it's also really cool that he's in these as well. But they have to fight this warlord, and so Cyndel's all by herself. She and Wicket are pretty much abandoned because the bad guy kidnaps like all the other Ewoks that we know about. So you've got this little girl and this little Ewok lost in the woods, trying to get the power cell back or survive from this warlord who has a witch. Mm-hmm. And then in one of the most confusing and brilliant casting decisions in the history of casting anything, along comes Wilford Brimley.
What?
Yes. Wilford Brimley rolls in as this, and somehow the man has always looked old. So like he looks old now, and he's also a really great follow on Twitter, by the way.
I will have to look him up, definitely.
Yeah, which is not, you wouldn't see coming, but he's very, very clever. And he like claps back at people all the time. And you're like, I didn't see this, Wilford. I mean, I didn't see this coming at all.
You mean Mr. Diabetes?
Yeah, Mr. Diabetes. And he goes to people with like that, people come at him with that, and he's brilliant. But he's basically the, like the Obi-Wan Kenobi, like Han Solo mix of this movie. Cindel and Wicket stumble upon this other spaceship, and there's this old guy who's trying to fix it because he crash landed there years ago. Evidently, I don't know where the Endor, the moon, is on terms of the intergalactic like highway, but it's the place everyone crashes. So it must be like a curve or something, because people crash there all the time. So he ends up becoming friends with them. Endor.
Okay.
And technically, they're on the forest moon of the planet Endor, but if you just do Endor, you'll find it.
I found it on Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, there's an entire Wikipedia for Star Wars people.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So Wilford Brimley shows up and helps save the day, and they defeat this warlord and his witch, and then they find a way to get off the planet because they get the power cell back, and he gets on the ship, and they fly off into the cosmos, and they leave the forest moon of Endor, and the Ewoks, little Ewoks waving away. But as a kid, I was watching Wilford Brimley in other stuff, and here he is as like this disgruntled space pirate, basically, who doesn't want to help the kid, but then ends up overthrowing a warlord because he had to, because he was a good guy. So the problem with my love for these movies is that really the only way that you can watch them is if you come to my house and watch the VHS that my parents recorded in 1984 and 1985.
Okay, but is it still working?
See, that's the question. I haven't put it in for like put it in a VCR in about 20 years because I'm so scared it's going to break and then I'll never be able to watch it again. So I don't watch it because I'm afraid of not being able to watch it. It's like a Pandora's box of VHS.
So if we decide to have a viewing party, you're going to have to break it out.
Well, you can watch some of it on YouTube because YouTube is the ultimate pirating device.
Okay.
You can usually find something on YouTube for a little bit. And there was a DVD released in 2004 that I have not found a copy of for under $200.
Woo!
Yeah. And this is for two movies that people think are horrible, except for me, which I think they're great. So, two great movies probably will never be able to be seen by most people. And I don't understand because Disney has like a lot of weird stuff on Disney Plus. Like they've,
yeah, I mean, look at Hamilton. First of all, I mean, I know it's not quite the same, but language, there's some content in that.
Oh yeah, it's that pushes the envelope some places. And I mean, for a while there, they still had the old animated Song of the South on Disney Plus.
Yeah, up until very recently.
Yeah, until somebody was like, "This is a bad idea." But you look at some of those old, even Disney shorts, like there's some questionable stuff in there when it comes to race relations and male-female relationships. And it's just stuff that you're like, wow, you guys are letting this on there, but you're concerned about little tiny teddy bears that like save people.
Yeah,
I don't understand it. There's actually been a petition online. So the actor who played in the first movie Caravan of Courage, the actor who played Mace, who was the teenage son, started a petition on change.org to get it onto Disney Plus. But the problem being, he started this a year ago, and there have only been 3,803 people that have signed up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that includes me. Like, I'm on there.
How many times have you signed?
Well, Change is really good about not letting you sign more than once.
Okay.
So only me and two of my alter egos have signed. So that's like, really, it's only 3,800 people because three of them are me.
Have you like shared this? Have any of your other friends that are way into this, have they signed?
I remember, like, I've always been a nerd. Like there was a 2-week period in 7th grade where I tried to change my name to Anakin, and thank God no one let me do it.
Wow, Adam.
Yeah, it was rough. That would not have gone well. But even my friends who are into Star Wars, is most people have not seen this because you had to have seen it in 1984, 1985 on a Sunday night. It was broadcast once. Each of them was broadcast once, and they have never been seen again. So it's like I read a book that I want everyone else to read, but I can only tell them about it.
That's interesting. I mean,
it's kind of sad.
I don't like. I mean, I don't know. How do you get the word out?
No, I mean, if the guy who was in the movie, and there's like 4 or 5 articles about him starting like the change.org thing, and it was like covered by like Decoder and Decider and like other like seemingly reputable websites that probably have some sort of an audience. And after a year, only 3,800 people and me have really signed the thing.
What was the goal? I should ask that. What was the goal amount of signatures?
So the goal, so I think the original was like, if it gets, so it says right now, let's get to 5,000. But the original article that I heard said, like, if it got to 500,000, then the guy would deliver the, I guess he'd print it out. I don't know. You can't deliver a change.org petition, but he'd deliver the petition personally to Lucasfilm and Disney. But we're a little short of our 500,000 goal.
Just a tad.
Just a bit. I mean, we'll get there. It's just, I mean, probably going to be another 100 years. I don't even want to do the math on that. If it takes 3,800 a year, how many years it would take to get to 500,000 is going to be a bit.
Well,
so, I mean, if somebody is interested, go to YouTube, type in Caravan of Courage or the Battle for Endor. You'll get to see clips. You'll get to see Wilford Brimley looking like really confused as to why he's in the movie, but still like fighting the bad guy. And it's pretty dated. It looks like a movie from, TV movie from the early 80s, but it is in my top 10 films that I love that most people have never heard of.
So you highly recommend?
I highly recommend it. If you like old movies, like if you've ever watched like an old Godzilla movie and you were like, yeah, I can see that rubber man in a suit having something resembling a monster, then this will be fine for you.
All right. So what do we need to look up on YouTube one more time?
So the Ewoks Caravan of Courage, or the Ewok The Battle for Endor, which I think is just a really good title. And that was the one I watched more when I was a kid, even though it messed me up because it actually has like a battle. Ewok, the Caravan of Courage is more about, like I said, it's like, it's like a road trip.
All right. I'm not going to guarantee you that I'm going to watch this because, well, I know nothing about Star Wars, so I don't know that this would,
Oh, but that's actually that you're the perfect person who should dive right in because then you have no misconceptions.
Okay.
Because you're just like, oh, here's a story about a walking teddy bear and a little girl that looks like Drew Barrymore.
A murderous walking teddy bear.
Oh yeah, I mean they're murder bears.
All right, we're back with the remake. So what basically the remix is, we each presented our side, and now we get to like mix it up. You get to tell me your thoughts on my side, and I'll tell you my thoughts on your side.
And more than just thoughts, it's that one thing that like after hearing the other side or hearing the story or hearing what each of us has talked about, is that one thing that's kind of sticking with you, like now that you've taken 10-15 minutes to step away. And I think originally the thing that I thought my remix from your story of Xavier and his murderous plot to get rid of his whole family that disappear was going to be the stuff, like where did he put everything. But now that I've taken a step back from that, the thing that really sticks with me is the level of like just despair and like how low he had to have gotten to a point where he thought this was the out. Like to take months and plan things, like this is beyond a psychological break. This is someone losing their complete hold on reality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then to have that, but then somehow be able to, for the next 9 years, evade capture while being somebody who seemingly has a complete break with reality it's unsettling. Like that person someone could do something like that and then find a way to be invisible and live within society for another 9 years, potentially, even if we, this one photo from Chicago is real, that gives me chills that people, you go to a cafe, then the person sitting next to you could have done this 9 years ago and have lived a life unbeknownst to everyone since.
I have read that statistically, which of course, varies, but statistically right, on average, you encounter 7 different, which technically he would be considered a serial killer because a serial killer is 2 or more. So right, you encounter 7 different serial killers in your lifetime.
Wow.
Insane.
Yeah, like just like it could be the guy next to you at the cafe, it could be your
barista. I mean, it could be your Uber driver, your Uber Eats food driver. I mean,
teacher,
yeah,
pastor. Yeah. All right, well, sleeping the lights on.
All right. So...
Sorry, dog. I know it's hot. You don't want to sleep next to me, but you're staying here now.
So my takeaway from your side, I had no idea. Like I knew the depth of Star Trek. I mean, not Star Trek, because that's the one I love, Star Wars. Because, you've got the original and then there's like the prequel, the sequel, the Mandalorian now there. And then I guess this whole new, but I mean, it's going way even further than I thought with like Ewoks having their own battles and fan.
Yeah.
Like this is literally its own universe.
Oh yeah. And I think the one thing that I've was so impressive about The Mandalorian, not to Bogart and steal your remix, but you mentioned The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian works because it's in the world of or in the universe of Star Wars, but it's truly its own story. It doesn't have to be about, the Skywalkers or, the big space battle. It's about, this guy and this baby. And I think that's what I loved about the Ewok movies, is that it's just a story that takes place in a bigger world, but it's completely contained within its own as well.
So if you had to pick between the two to recommend, the Caravan of Courage / Battle of Endor, right?
Yeah, so those are the two.
Oh, or The Mandalorian. If someone said, all right, you got to pick one and the other's going away forever.
Oh, I could do an entire hour on The Mandalorian. It is it ceases to be just a Star Wars movie or series, and it is just a incredibly well done piece of art. So of the two, either the Ewok movies or The Mandalorian, if you had to choose, watch The Mandalorian, because you don't have to know anything about space or Star Wars or any of the lore. You just need to know people, and that is what it does a really good job of.
Okay. All right. Well, that has been the very first A-side, B-side.